Hello, everyone, and welcome to the world first procurement health checkup OPD. This side Montu Verma, and I am a procurement expert. I hope you all are safe and sound, and we are going to have a great evening today because we are going to have a very special guest, Mr. Karthik Rama, who is a procurement doctor, is going to interact with all of you who listen and diagnose the issues successfully, will give you a prescription with pill to heal the issues naturally. Hello, Karthik Rama, and welcome to the world first online procurement health checkup OPD. Though you are very familiar with the audience, however, please start with your quick introduction. And after your introduction, please take a pause and allow 1 minute to our participant to ask any question, or we can have most frequently asked question for what you are requested to diagnose and give a prescription to us. So, Karthik Rama, over to you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on as a guest. And I thoroughly enjoy meeting Montu. We had a couple of chances to meet in the past, not in person, with a large social distancing being kilometers away, but virtually. Nevertheless, I can see him, he can see me. I could talk to you guys. You guys can ask me questions. Thank you so much, Montu, to having me to get me on this show, and I'll be glad to contribute to this community. A bit of a background from my side. Montu has been putting a lot on my behalf for this session on LinkedIn. I hope you guys have read some of that. I have close to 18 years of experience. I have helped transform organizations in terms of their procurement processes. I did to close to 45-50% of the 18 years. I was a buyer or contract manager. I was managing a team of buyers as well. I helped the finance team on the invoice processing. Finance and procurement, they were not mingling together. There were a lot of exception notices. I helped settle that. I've helped many organizations set up the procurement process in India, transitions, the strategic work from the States, a lot of contract workspace work as well, a lot of transition of contracts from one place to the other. And although I'm not a technical guy, I've also helped organizations deploy different tools, the procurement tools that you know, the SAPs, the Arivas, the Coupas, the iValuas. So there's some bit of work out there as well. So I've seen folks from different industries, different categories. When I was a buyer, I was a buyer for the services side of things, for environmental services, professional services, contractual services, and I helped transform multiple other types of businesses, so to say, or categories. That's a bit from my side, Montu, in terms of the introduction.
From Suravi, how to manage import?
I think we have another question. Go ahead, Montu. I'm sorry.
Yes. So next question from Suravi is how to manage import procurement for volatile commodities since every next day pricing is increasing. Thank you, Suravi, for joining us and asking the question.
That's a tough one, Shurabhi, and thanks for asking the question. I think I'm glad that we have some female participation as well. We've in the last two webinars, I hardly found any female participants. So thank you for joining. The more you guys join, the better. What you're referring to out here?
Yeah, yes.
Paper,
Yes.
packaging.
PVC. Yeah, PVC. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it.
Basically,
Got
print films on PVC
Yeah.
products,
Yeah.
PP chips.
Painful, right? Very painful process to manage
It's
them.
very painful to manage.
So I'll tell you what worked for me, right? And I myself personally have never purchased that commodity, but I worked in a project with one of my colleagues. As a fact, my wife worked on this. She used to work for raw materials, energy, and packaging. So I remember her pains of how to enter all the pricing on every other day on into the ERP, just so that the invoice doesn't get rejected and so on and so forth. And they had this very tedious process of managing the prices with between the buying organization and the supplier or multiple suppliers. So we so one thing that's helped out there is to have. So we had worked on something called a standard pricing template. Okay, and this was old school back in the day, maybe in 2010 or 12. What we had done is we created a macro based spreadsheet which had the pricing for whatever history that you had, and you're trying to look at is accurate. And the contracts, in the contracts there's a clause of a specific percentile of variation that you can accommodate to over basis the calculation you've done in the last 6 months, however the pricing was. And if there's a ridiculously exceptional case where the pricing is too high from that, only then the supplier comes back for us with the price change. So that's how they had managed it, and they had a lot of trouble in managing the pricing itself. So they had, I had worked with them on a project in terms of bringing a standard pricing template, which all the suppliers use. They fill it in the same way. It's not their spreadsheet that we're using. It's our particular macro-enabled spreadsheet, which will gather the historical pricing for that particular volatile commodity. So these are the two things that I've done in the past. I hope it might help you by some extent, Surabhi.
Then I think I should learn that macros from you so that I can do the same.
Yeah, macro is a simple thing. We could just you have a lot of YouTube tutorials, as well as in Excel itself, you'll be able to do a lot of stuff. So you just
that I know, the templates which you made. I'm talking about that. If you can share, or if you can like explain it a bit more.
Sure, we could do that. Take that offline, Surabhi, for sure.
Sure.
I'll create a sample. That was like 8 years ago. I'll try to create a sample and show you what was done.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
So, Surabhi,
thank you for the question.
First time, or you are revisiting us?
Sir, last Sunday also I've joined.
Thank you for joining us.
This is my second time I've joined.
That's great. So, and do not forget to comment about your experience on our social media. Thank you for joining.
Sure, sir. Sure.
So, Karthik, our next question from Gorang Soni is how to identify and select potential vendor or supplier.
Inky Pinky Ponky. Do Inky Pinky Ponky. Whichever guy wears a red shirt, if you like red shirt, that's the easiest way to select the supplier. I think a lot of people do that as well. So I'm glad that you're putting in thought in it, Gaurang, of whether that you pick the right supplier, right, to identify it as well. I know a lot of us do a lot of Google search. या चाचा का या ताया का लड़के का पहचान वाला supplier that you would go with, right? Or someone that your relative, someone that you have reference of, you go with, or you straight go with the end user, saying that he's saying, I like this supplier. I brought my my cables from him the last time. I want to buy from him itself. So there's little to no thought put around this, but I'm glad that you are putting thought and are asking this question. There are a couple of ways, depending on what you want to buy and how much you want to buy, whether you're going to buy from him too often or it's just a one-time buy. So there are these different variations, and basis those variations, you'll need to choose your method of selecting a supplier. Okay. Now, so if it's a one-time buy, you obviously don't need to do too much of an effort. But but still there's certain validation that you need to do with the supplier, just so that he's the right guy. Deepak, do you mind going on mute? I think there's a lot of disturbance on your phone line. Or can you put him on mute? Yeah, thanks. Awesome. So I was talking about basic, simple supplier who you would buy from for the first time, but still you don't want that guy to do something stupid that could put your company in a lawsuit. He ended up getting the product produced by a small kid who was 12 years old, and because of that, you are also coming into the fuss. So you need to do that basic identification or look at those specific uh, requirements basis the company or the region or the type of buy that you are doing. If there's somebody who's the guy in the middle, you don't ask him too many questions, but still you want to be sure that he is doing whatever he's supposed to do in terms of from the product or the service. So there are few standard questions that you could ask from a company financial standpoint. You can do identifying. You can do other checks. Every company has their own recipe, but there's at least I've seen companies that ask close to 600 questions to onboard a supplier. There are companies which only ask 9 questions: name, telephone number, address, and all this. So there's a huge gap here. Now the other piece is the source for identifying a supplier or discovering a supplier. We have a tool go in and identify the right supplier. And this is what I've seen. So you basically attack the supplier identification basis 2 or 3 base tiers, depending on what kind of purchase that you're doing. And you will manage the supplier thereafter, depending on the classification you give in that supplier. Does that help? Gaurav? Awesome.
Sir,
Thank you. Good.
can I ask related to this only?
Yeah,
So
and
if we,
who's this, ma'am? Is it Surabhi again?
sir,
Okay, good.
yeah. Sir, for example, if we have 10 suppliers and we have planned to buy for a longer time, so like what and all criteria we should select?
Okay. 10 suppliers, 10 suppliers that you've onboarded, or you're planning to engage them?
Yeah, I want to finalize like which supplier I should select among all those 10 suppliers.
Okay, and it's a long-term relationship
Yeah, a long-term relationship.
that you plan to do. Okay. So what I was talking about is idealistically a supplier management program, okay, that your company needs to have on what type of suppliers need to go in what, how they need to be managed or how they need to be onboarded. Now, if it's a long-term contract, high spend, and when you say a long-term high spend, these are suppliers, if they don't perform well, your company is at stake. So these are the critical suppliers for you. Okay. For these suppliers, idealistically, you should have them on a supplier management program for sure. You won't have too many of them. You just have like maybe 10 or 8 or at the maximum 20% of your suppliers in this category. So you need to have a supplier manager. You know what a supplier manager does? He's the guy who manages the relationship, and this supplier manager could be a procurement guy, or it could be the business user, because he interacts with the supplier more so. And as a part of the onboarding process, you need to definitely do the basic compliance checks, whatever ISO certifications and all that. And then you need to validate him for that particular category that you're buying. For instance, you're buying him for software services, you need to validate all his credentials for the software. Or if it's server, what is his references or previous complaints, or all those verifications need to be done. As a part of the onboarding process, once he's getting onboarded, you need to identify a particular supplier manager, identify the matrices that the supplier needs to perform against. And then as a part of that performance evaluation, you need to go back to the supplier every 3 months or 6 months, depending on the kind of communications you have, for them to deliver the reports. And also you need to engage the end user to understand if he's satisfied with the supplier. You need to have backup suppliers as well. So that's how you overall manage these critical suppliers, so to say. Does that help, Surabhi?
Yes, sir.